All right, so this post officially marks the first of our 2021 adventure. It is my hope that you're approaching these with a certain mindset, whether that mindset be one of, I am getting better at these every time, or I'm going to get better at these eventually, or even just, hey, this is becoming a little more routine for me. Maybe you found a formula that works for you. And or what if it's just, wow, I learned something from that article, or that was a neat article that I never would have read if it weren't for this. So if you kind of approach it with one of those mindsets or all of those mindsets, then I think that's a win. Okay, it is my hope that you are reading more and different things. It is my hope that you are responding to text in writing. And again, our next step when we get into quarter three will be responding to one another as well. So, you can start taking a look at other people's posts too as we get ready for that. Let's not forget that we're also getting into a routine when we do this type of reading. And this type of reading, of course, is close reading, when you know you're going to have to respond to a prompt or a question at the end. It's a different type of reading than when you're just picking something up and, reading it for pleasure. So we read the prompt or the question first. Then we can closely read the article looking for specific evidence. I do recommend outlining and or drafting your post since this is a published post. And then that would allow you to revise and add transitions before publishing to Schoology. So let's do that. That being reading the prompt first. And you can see there's that page of transitions. And, definitely a good time in our lives, your lives in 7th grade to be trying on some new transitions for size. All right. So the prompt says, the central idea of the power of advertising is that ads are capable of manipulating people more than they realize, convincing consumers that certain products are linked to specific emotions and experiences. Write a post analyzing how the author develops this central idea in the text. Use at least 2 pieces of text evidence in your response. In your conclusion, write about a time when an ad has appealed to you. What about the ad caught your attention? So we want to focus specifically, and this is where analysis is really tricky sometimes. They've given us the central idea. It's no longer what is the central idea. It's how did the author develop this central idea that they've already provided for us. So we're looking for ads manipulating, ads being linked to emotions and experiences as we kind of read. And how did the author get from point A to point B? So I notice that there are some subheadings, right? Using these kind of questions as subheadings. What is advertising? Advertising is a way of communicating with people about a product or service. Usually it gives people information about the product or service and to explain why they should buy it. Sometimes it communicates with people about why they should continue buying. In the case of advertising, communicating doesn't simply mean talking to them. Advertisements are communicated to people using every possible method, including television, radio, magazines, and websites. An advertisement can be anything from the commercial before a YouTube video to the small banner on the side of a web page. These days, there are so many ways of communicating that people are nearly always being exposed to advertisements, from products endorsed by Kendall Jenner on Instagram to the lawyer's face on the bus bench. Worldwide, advertising is a billion-dollar industry with nearly $500 billion spent in 2016. That industry includes the companies that place advertisements, the agencies that create them, and the media that runs them. A really good advertisement isn't easy to make. Companies sometimes hire agencies to solve this problem for them. Advertising agencies write, design, and create the advertisement. Today, advertising agencies create all sorts of ads that go on TV and magazines, across the bottom of mobile apps, or on the sides of buses. But not all companies use advertising agencies. Some hire creative people to work at the company and write, design, and create ads just for that company, year-round. Once an advertisement is produced, it will be passed on to a media company who will then run the ad. When the media company runs an ad, it ensures that viewers have to see the advertisement. That is why magazines have full-color photos of new bags to purchase, and the Super Bowl plays commercials in the middle of the game. In fact, the Super Bowl is so widely watched that companies often pay more than $1 million for the ad slot, and the commercials are anticipated all year long. For most media companies, advertisements are the main way the company makes money. If a television show can prove that 1 million people will be watching, companies will pay a lot of money for those people to to watch their ad as well. Without advertising, we would likely not have television shows, magazines, newspapers, or internet content that we could watch or read without paying a subscription fee. When did advertising emerge? Before the early 1900s, advertisements were more informative than persuasive, relegated to tiny print at the backs of magazines. It was generally thought that if a picture was trying too hard to sell you a product, the product was probably hogwash, absurd, foolish, and unlikely to work. The ads were also incredibly localized. Philadelphia newspapers ran ads in the back of the paper informing consumers about Philadelphia stores and products. However, as the Industrial Revolution took hold of the country, suddenly there were more standardized products on the market. National advertising became more popular. It started to become almost necessary for companies to advertise in order to sell enough products to survive. Advertising agencies moved from selling small space in the backs of local papers to designing increasingly creative ads. As consumer spending ramped up throughout the 1920s, advertising followed suit. In the 1960s, advertisements became much more creative and started to look more like what we see today. The advertising industry became more important and started to attract writers, artists, and musicians. As advertising became more popular and artistic, it also became more pervasive. By the 1970s and 1980s, advertising was everywhere. How and why does advertising work? Here's where I bet a lot of our evidence could come from. Advertising works by connecting products to positive feelings or experiences. Through the power of advertising, a scented candle becomes synonymous with the feeling of warmth, coziness, and being at home. Candy canes are associated with Christmas. Steak and lobster dinners are instantly linked to luxury and feeling powerful. Vegas brings up thoughts of fun, and a diamond ring, rare and valuable, becomes an integral part of getting engaged. But a really good advertisement wants to do even more. It wants consumers to remember it and to connect the brand to that advertisement. That is why most people can name more breakfast cereal mascots than U.S. presidents. And it's why advertisers create slogans, jingles, and characters for their campaigns. As Nigel Hollis, writing in The Atlantic, explains it, the best advertisements are ingenious at leaving impressions. He goes on to describe a friend who, after claiming that advertisements did not have such an effect, could quote jingles and premises of ads for an entire range of products. These days, advertising is constant, but because of how and why advertising works, it can have negative effects on society. Take the beauty industry, for example. A makeup company like Maybelline wants people to associate its product with feeling happy, healthy, skinny, and naturally beautiful. The company comes up with the slogan, "Maybe she's born with it, maybe it's Maybelline," and they hire a slim model to wear the product in the advertisement. Tricks of light and makeup are used to make the model appear to naturally have the attributes the makeup enhances. People start to associate looking like that model with both the product and the brand through the catchy slogan. And so people buy the product to look like the model, even though the model looks that way because of Photoshop, not because of mascara. Advertisements work to sell things through association and brand recognition, not by conveying the truth. As ads become ubiquitous or everywhere, these appeals to our desires can become harmful. People rarely go to a product directly after seeing an advertisement. Instead, the ad works to associate positive memories with the product and the recognition of the brand. The power of advertising is in the long game. Okay, so there's a lot going on here, all building to this idea that advertising manipulates us, right? Tricks of light and makeup and associations, and they're appealing to our emotions, which is my goodness, okay, what a manipulation to go after emotion. And so we're in the business as close readers of how did the author get there, from the beginning, all the way to the end. And so if we look at our outline, it prompts us to start off with a statement of how. Okay, the article, The Power of Advertising, develops the central idea that ads are capable of manipulating people more than they realize, convincing consumers that certain products are linked to specific emotions and experiences by. So again, that by is going to be filled in with what did the author do to convey that central idea. And so it might include things like by providing a history of advertising and giving examples of ads that use manipulation, to sell, feelings, uh, to sell products, I should say, sorry, via feelings and experiences. Okay, so what I'm doing is not saying what the author said, but instead what the author did. The author did provide a history lesson. The author did give examples like Maybelline, okay, or the guy from the Atlantic. The author did other things. The author gave, kind of used question and answer format, cause and effect format. You could have done something there about structure. Okay, you could have used word choice, diction, was used to convey this as well. So what I'm going to do for my supporting details is I'm first going to find a supporting detail about the history lesson. And that appeared when they started talking about the Industrial Revolution. Up until then, it was, hey, if you wanted to look at ads, you had to flip to the back of the magazine or the newspaper, and they were teeny tiny print, not colorful, and they were about your city or your town, okay? But then once things started being mass produced, it was countrywide, and so then advertising boomed, and so then they started being everywhere. Then they started being about manipulation and less about information. Then the examples, and I would probably pull from that Maybelline section, would be my second piece of evidence, and I would explain how the author uses Maybelline as an example because it's using Photoshop and tricks and our wanting to, our desire to be beautiful, to sell a product. And so that shows that there's manipulation involved. Okay. And then finally, don't forget that because these posts are connections to literature, it's not just about, providing text evidence, but can you connect with it as well? I'd like you in your conclusion sentences to write about a time when an ad has appealed to you. What about the ad caught your attention? So it doesn't mean that you necessarily bought the product, but what about it appealed to you? So, for example, maybe it's a jingle for something that, it got stuck in your head, or maybe the ad made you laugh. I can remember there was a Doritos ad a few Super Bowl years ago that just made me laugh because it was so ridiculous. And so I can, that one appealed to me. Did it make me go out and buy Doritos? Not necessarily. But if I'm looking for a nacho kind of covered chip, I do tend to go for that one. So who knows? Maybe it's because it made me laugh and feel good all those years ago. All right. Okay. So again, if you have questions, if you want to work on this together, office hours, and reach out and keep reading and writing.